saw a couple bits of that on your. Wait, is this on the Dr. Dragon channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I saw you're obviously quite into the Champions League.
Yeah, yeah. I got into football like 4 years ago, and I've just loved it so much more than any American sport. So I've just been watching it religiously. Brazilian football is really amazing because they like it's the most passionate fans you'll ever experience in your life.
Yeah, yeah. I'm surprised you're calling it football, though. I would have thought you'd say soccer. Or is that just because you're in South America right now and you don't want to be attacked in the street?
No, I just hear it being called football so many times, and like I
Mhm.
really don't like, except for like the Super Bowl, just because I feel like as an American I have to watch that.
For
Besides
sure.
that, I don't watch any American football whatsoever. So it's like
Yeah.
like I'm at a point right now where like there are even some words that like I pronounce in like the British way, just because like I hear those words so much more often in a football context than I hear in like and like
Yeah.
for example, Premier, I pronounce it Premier because it's the Premier
Premier
League.
League.
It's
Yeah. Wow. That's funny. Do you have like a Premier League team that you support?
Liverpool.
Oh no! Oh, so
Who-
I don't. I'm not so into football anymore. But when I was like growing up, my dad's a big Arsenal fan. So
okay.
like I went to a lot of Arsenal games when I was growing up. Like, I think I went to my first one. I was like 6 years old or something. So I've been to the Emirates Stadium quite a lot. But
Yeah, yeah, I really want to go to an English football game. The only one I've been to is Brazilian, which again was just an insane atmosphere. Literally,
yeah,
not a single person was sitting the entire game. It
yeah.
was it was unbelievable. So, yeah, I mean, Brazil is just crazy, just in general. It's
Hmm.
it's 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 a crazy group of people.
How long have you been there now?
Um, my total time in Brazil, like 7 months. My total
Mhm.
time in South America now has been about like a year, I'd say, a year and a half.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I speak Spanish now, as as
Hmm.
as as you
Yeah.
just
I
heard.
saw.
But weirdly, Portuguese is harder if you only know a little bit Spanish. If you
Yeah.
know no Spanish, Portuguese is easy.
Yeah.
If you're fluent, Portuguese is easy. But if you know a little bit of Spanish, it's very difficult.
I had a girlfriend before who was she was like half well, quarter Portuguese, but she spoke Portuguese at home. And like
Yeah,
I can speak a bit of Spanish, like I did it at school. It's just even though there's such similar languages, the sounds in like some of the words are just so different to anything
yeah.
in the rest of that area of Europe. Like it almost starts to sound a bit Eastern European, maybe even a bit of like it almost sounds kind of like an Arabic sounding kind of language. Some of the sounds that come out.
100%. I describe Portuguese as I gave a as Spanish pronounced in a Polish way. So like if a Polish person was speaking Spanish,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Portuguese. It's funny because like I was visit last year when I first went to Brazil, or 2 years ago actually. Wow, I've been traveling for 2 years now.
Hmm.
I went to Costa Rica, Colombia. Then I went to
Hmm.
go see my grandma in Poland, and then I went to Brazil. So I was just in
Okay.
Poland for a month, and I went to a supermarket in Brazil. I remember looking around when I was just like, "Are these people speaking Polish?" Like it literally sounds exact. The words are different, obviously, but it
Yeah,
sounds like the same
it's
thing as
like an
Polish.
uncanny valley, like a kind of like it's that bits sound Hispanic, but then bits really don't.
But like
Um,
the funny thing is, if you look at the words
mhm.
written down, it's exactly like
Oh
Spanish.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's one or two letters differently, but
Mhm.
like spoken, it's like a completely different language. There are actually a lot of Arabs in Brazil.
Really?
I don't know if people. This is like something that's not commonly known. Yeah, so Arabs all throughout South America have had a big cultural influence. For
Hmm.
example, have you ever had al pastor? Like it's like Mexican food. It's basically like Mexican shawarma. And it's like the
Okay.
most popular type of taco in Mexico, but it was originally from Lebanon. And
Okay.
in Brazil, they have a lot of foods that are directly, you know, influenced by Middle East. Like there's one thing called the kibe, which is
Okay.
actually Lebanese food, but they make it here. And then like they
Yeah.
have like churrasco, which is literally just like meat on a stick, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
Lebanese also. So Yeah,
Yeah.
they huge Middle Eastern like influence here.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess like it's probably a bit of a like trope, but I'm always like, obviously South America seems cool, but I'm just like, damn, I hope I don't get kidnapped if I go there. That's like the kind of I don't know, like what people kind of worry about. Like, what do you think like navigating that being someone from like the US is like? Do you stand out? Like, like so for example, when I go to India, people stare like, and
Yeah,
I'm brown, like I look fairly Indian, right?
yeah,
But like they can just tell when you're not like from around there. And then I'm like, if I'm not with family who kind of point me in the right direction, I'm gonna get kidnapped. So
yeah.
like how do you like have you like navigated that?
What actually funny direct um, tangent that actually happened to me when I was in Poland, where like people would always be like, "Oh, you're an American," like
Oh,
before I
okay.
even like opened my mouth, and
I
I'm
thought
like,
you meant that happened to me. I got kidnapped.
"Oh no, 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 no." But it's funny because literally like Polish is my first language. I don't speak it as well anymore, but like when I was a
Mhm,
kid, I was raised by my grandmother, like any immigrant, right? And
mhm,
like I spent cumulatively like 3 years in Poland. Literally, both of my parents are from Poland, so
mhm.
like genetically I am 100% Polish, but people can
Yeah,
tell immediately.
yeah.
Just like the way you walk, the way you talk is just like,
Haircuts is something I've been told. Like
oh
that's
yeah,
the
that's
thing. Like
true.
when I meet Indian students in London who are at my university, they're always like one of the big things is it. Well, it's haircuts, and then they said also like every Indian guy is exactly the same build. And so that kind of which once they pointed it out, I was like, oh yeah, everyone is kind of everyone looks just like they're Indian guys, same haircut, same build, same like
Yeah,
kind of style of clothing.
I gotta say, India was the one country on my so like I took an actual trip around the world, like a year long, one
Hmm.
month in like different countries. I spent 3 weeks in India, and it was the only country I didn't like. I my problem with India is this: is that like so just to
The food.
contrast. No, I actually the food was the one thing I loved.
Okay.
Which is weird because like I like as you can tell by me, like I'm somebody who really enjoys food. So if you are, India was the second best food country I've been to.
Hmm.
So the fact that you're the second best food country and the worst country is just like ridiculous. You're the
Yeah.
second best food country. For me, you should be number two. But my problem with India is that, so just compare like Brazil and Germany, right?
Hmm.
In Germany, everyone follows all the rules all the time, right? At
Yeah.
least in like the really German parts of Germany, right?
Hmm.
And like it sucks, it's suffocating, but at the same time, it's nice. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the streets are
You know
clean,
what to
everything is
expect.
great because
Yeah.
everyone follows rules. Versus Brazil, where no one follows any rules, like it's a lawless hellscape down here in a
Hmm.
good way. But because of that, you have a lot of freedom. You can do whatever you want, right? So like there's a give and take, right?
Hmm.
My problem with India is that they're such sticklers about different stupid rules, and at the same time the country's a shithole. And you're
Oh,
just like,
mate. Yeah.
why are you forcing me to follow? Like I remember like I was like jaywalking or something, and a
Mhm.
policeman stopped me literally mid street and told me to go back. And I was like, brother, I can just like it's the same distance at this point.
I'm already halfway there.
Yeah, and I was looking around, like there's literally like shit on the street, like human shit on the street. I'm like, why are you
Yeah.
stopping me for this? It actually reminded me. There's an old Polish joke that I used to be told a lot as a kid. Where like a there's a setup with like a Russian and like a French swimmer, but like the Polish swimmer swims halfway, realizes he's too tired to finish. He knows that he's going to drown if he tries to finish, so he swims back and drowns on his way back. But it's like I'm literally halfway through. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that was my problem with India. It's just like I was being interrogated for like 20 minutes when I was like trying to get into the country, and I was just like,
Damn.
yeah,
With an
you have to get a
American
visa
passport.
with an American passport.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
I had to get a visa. It was the one country I had to get a visa. An
Yeah.
easy way to make me hate your country is to make me do paperwork. By the way, that's just
Yeah, I don't
right
know.
off the bat.
It's such a like confused culture, I think is the thing I found like exactly like you said, there's things where it's like no big deal, but then there's things where it's like everything and it's like I mean I guess we're kind of getting to the matter at hand here in that
Yeah,
like when all this stuff was kicking off with um I've forgotten his name. Sriram.
Yeah,
So Sriram was like the focal point of it, right? Like, and he didn't do anything. Like, he just got
yeah.
appointed.
He just
The
got
stuff
appointed. He did not do anything,
yeah,
and at least at the time, right? Like he didn't do anything.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And well, I mean, even following that, he didn't do much. And then
yeah,
right, so okay, lots of people had lots of opinions, and then okay, then the racism started coming out towards Indians, right? But then this is where I started taking issue with what some of the Indians were doing. I started seeing people saying stuff like, you know, making video images on Grok that were like offensive to Christians and saying things about Christians, and I was like, guys, who do you think this is helping? Like, what are you
yeah,
doing here? Like, and then I got into a few little like arguments with people in the comments. I don't usually engage in that, but like I got into these and then I was like, guys, like what's the objective here? Like we, this is all kind of centered around Vivek and Shriram and the kind of idea of, meritocracy of, just do the work. That's
yeah,
what got us quite far. And, look, on the margins, the more I've looked into the H1B stuff, there is stuff going on. But like,
yeah,
there's certainly the thing that I see as what's like helped India, certainly Indian immigrants, do a lot better is just a willingness to kind of work your way up and do the work. And this kind of, I was hearing stuff like they were saying, oh well, we've been so nice for so long, and now it's time. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm
yeah.
looking at your profile photo. You're like 20 or something. Like, what do you mean you've been so nice for so
Yeah.
long?
I, I,
Um,
I always find this just as like a tangent that's always like funny. Like I was talking to someone this other day where like I was like, people are like, white people in charge for 500 years, or like you've been in charge for 500 years. I'm like, man, I'm 30. I haven't been in charge for any years. What are you talking about? It's the same thing. It's like we've been so
yeah,
nice for so long. It's like, dude, you're 20 years old. What are you talking about? You're a child. Yeah, no, I
yeah,
mean, I mean, it's kind of hard to unpack. I mean, I think the first thing is that like, there is a lot of like actual like, dyed in the wool racism towards Indians,
mm,
that especially like exposed on X and just in
yeah,
general. And I think that like, but I think that like, you know, one problem I had, I mean, of my many problems with racists, right? One
mm,
of those problems is that I think that it doesn't allow you to have like an actual conversation about
yes,
differences in cultures.
yeah,
Where like someone's like all Indians are smelly or like whatever it is, right? And
right.
and you can say like, look, like generally speaking, I think that like I don't I don't know what the right word is. Like I'm not a biggest fan of the culture of the country of India, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that all Indians necessarily have that culture, right?
hmm
Or it doesn't even
Yeah.
necessarily mean that like an Indian who has 40% Indian culture and 60% American culture that isn't a
Mm.
good mix. You know what I mean? So like I think that that's definitely like one huge problem with the discourse in general. And then like I to defend the Indians who were like saying negative things about Christianity, I feel like if you log onto your feed and all you see is just racism towards a group of
Mm.
people, I do understand people like coming back a little bit. You know what I mean? But
I don't know though. Like, I think I kind of started taking this different view on India. I kind of go back and forth. Sort of being that I'm Indian. My parents are Indian. They were born there. Obviously, I wasn't. I
yeah,
kind of go back and forth on bits, and growing up, your grandparents say stuff to you, and blah blah blah, and you want to be like positive about things. I think something that I thought about kind of here and there a lot more in the last, say, year or so since I heard it, because I think biology kind of put it in the sense of, well, the real ideology of India is polytheism, right? Which can be kind of analogous to capitalism because it's basically the better idea wins. Everyone's free to, you know, have your own company, make your own actions, worship your own god, have your own interpretation of the religion, your own kind of subset of Hinduism. So when I think that's the other reason it disappoints me when I see like Indians getting very like um very like coddled about it, very like like coddling of the American mind, very like us against them, we've put
Yeah.
up with it for too long, therefore we must, push back, and we need to show them how strong we are. And I'm like, okay, firstly, like, okay, yes, there are strong people in India, but we are not that phenotype, okay? Like, I'm like, let's just be realistic about that. But
Yeah.
like, realistically, what has worked well for us is that we can kind of, have this some kind of analogy to capitalism in how things are run. And I don't know, like, seeing all of that, it made me kind of a bit more cynical, I think, about sort of the adoption of the internet amongst Indians, because I think they've kind of picked up on, sort of the cultural wars in the West, where oppressed groups and minorities are kind of like, oh well, we've been, put under for so long, so we must take a stand now. And I think I kind of feel like that's where it's come from, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, I just hate that attitude in general. And I
Mm.
mean, I think India. I mean, overall, India's been like an incredible success story, and this is actually like an interesting point that like I heard Tucker Carlson make this point, and like when I heard it just kind of clicked with me because like it's an argument that people really make a lot, which is like, he was, I don't know if it was specifically about the H-1B visa, but it was like some
Hmm.
tangential issue about like the idea of brain drain, and he was
Hmm.
like, I don't want to brain drain other countries. Like I want India to be a very prosperous country. Like I want
Mm.
every country in the world to be fairly prosperous. When other countries are very poor, then we have to start sending them aid. They
Yeah.
start having wars. They start having all these conflicts. Like why do we want to steal the best of the branch from the other countries? And to go to our conversation about Balaji and like the um the way that he kind of viewed the world through that tweet is that
Hmm.
you know
What was
I
that post again?
yeah well I deleted my ex so I can't pull it
Oh
up
yeah.
but
Do you
but
remember?
you
Do you
can
remember what was in it? Because we spoke about it. It would be in.
yeah
It would be
yeah
in our DMs.
so his general perspective in the post and you mentioned that like he has like a larger conception of it but like his general
Hmm.
perspective on the post was like look there's like a red team and there's a blue team and
Hmm.
there's blue people in every country there's red people in every country and we need to align with the red people against the blue people right but I think that like I don't think he properly understands the kind of like red philosophy which is like there's a reason why there's never really been like an internationalist nationalist movement because it'd be
Hmm.
kind of like like an anarchist government. It's like
Yeah.
I want you to do what you want. I want me to do what I want.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um.
I mean, so
Sorry,
so
continue.
I think that there is this other dimension which he gets into in the book, the network state book. And then just generally, I think in some of the other things I've seen him say in like interviews and stuff, which I think is, I mean, obviously, look, I have a bit of a bias for biology. I think a lot of stuff he says makes sense to me, but I like to think of these as kind of nice ways of thinking about things, and then maybe tweak them on the margins. So he kind
Yeah.
of conceptualizes it more as like a kind of tripolar system in that it's red, blue, and gray, where gray is kind of the I don't know the capitalistic meritocratic kind of digital nomad or
Yeah.
entrepreneur or non-affiliated. But what he's saying about we need to affiliate with the Reds is that the Dems won for a long time, and then
Yeah.
Trump had his tenure, and then that got treated as like some kind of big calamity, even though there were good and bad parts of his presidency for sure. I personally think the good kind of outweighed the bad, and he also
Yeah.
ended up being on the start of a generational event, so you can't really make a fair measurement. But I think the general idea is that because the Dems have become so deep so the Blues have become so deep into the apparatus of not just the government, but they really had big tech by the balls. Everyone in Silicon Valley was donating to them. Wall Street got won over, I believe, by Obama and had been blue since then. And so every institution was captured, which meant
Yeah.
the Dems got to this point where they could just point at people and go, "You're gone." right? And that's I think the thing that the pushback was against, the idea of aligning, with kind of, because I can see why you would say align with the Reds and not I am a through and through Republican, because on the right there is going to be racism. Like I literally multiple times per week will have someone just reply with some, I'll make a point that is like I don't know, like a red coded thing.
Yeah.
And then someone will just dive in and say something like, "You'll never be one of us," or some
Yeah.
shit like that, right? And that's fine. Like I know what game I'm playing, that's I don't necessarily need to engage with them, but that's just how it is. But there is that, and that's because on the red side you are just going to get a bit of racism. On the blue side you're going to get socialism, which
Yeah.
make your argument for what's worse across which dimensions. But the point being that because they had so much power on the blues, that's why we align with the reds, and it is a tripolar
Oh,
model.
I completely agree with that, and to be honest, that's why. Like, so it's the background on me personally. I was like a staunch Democrat. I literally worked for the Democratic Party for 3 years. I was a staunch Democrat until
Yeah.
2021,
Yeah.
2022. But living in California for 7 years just makes you into a Republican. Like, it's the worst run state on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's terrible. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think also like a big problem for me was just the overt lying. Like Donald Trump has like
Oh
stupid
man.
lies, but like they
Yeah.
have like like one of the things like crime statistics would always piss me off, where it's just like, oh, it's safer now than ever. It's like, I don't know, I remember 6 years ago, I remember now. It's not safer right now. And it's like, well, the statistics say it's like, well, you can fudge statistics. You can do
Man,
stuff. You can do
that's
stuff.
such a thing, isn't it? Like people don't seem to get like people. I think there's this kind of superficial like view on science where it's like if you pad it with the right words, if you say the right woke shibboleths, to quote Sam Bankman-Fried, people treat it as the religious truth, right? Like
Yeah.
if you say, well, the statistics say this, they just they take that, but they don't realize like a statistical test requires assumptions. Right?
Yeah, I would actually even push back on you and say that I think you are giving them way too much credence. Where like they are like so like this has happened to me so many times now that I just go in with the assumption. Like whenever I see like a statistic, I'm just like, that doesn't make sense. I literally look into it, and it's the stupidest type of accounting. Like one there was a it was one of the last Twitter feuds that I've ever had. Getting emotional. Mother Jones published this article talking about how earnings, how like profits for healthcare companies have been outpacing healthcare earnings. And I looked at that. I was just like, that doesn't make any sense because legally they're not allowed to have more than 15% profits. So like, how is that the case? And it turns out that what they did was they just chose the 3 companies that had the largest increase and used their increase and like forget ignored all the other companies. And you're just like, literally, this is but they'll just like the statistics say, and you're like,
man, yeah,
they're just lied.
It's so dishonest.
It reminds me of there's this old Soviet joke. Some of the funniest jokes I think are like old jokes about the USSR, but like sadly applicable to the Democratic Party, where like there was this guy talking to this like party boss talking to somebody. It was just like, it's incredible all the buildings we're building on Karl Marx Street. And the guy's like, I walk on Karl Marx Street every day. There are no buildings built. It's like, what do you believe, your eyes or the newspapers? And it's like, reminds me of like Joe Biden being, senile. It's
man, that's the big one. I actually made a joke about this, about something at work that really made my boss chuckle. But it was just KJP, right? Like just her. I felt sorry for her. Like her job was to go out there and just lie through her teeth and dodge questions like she was Muhammad Ali for half an hour, whilst everyone knew what was going on. And man, just the list just goes on and on about the amount of things where it was like, the masks don't work. Okay, actually they do. You must wear masks. Vaccines won't work. Okay, Trump's gone. Now it's our vaccine. Therefore, they must work. Like, do you remember that? Like the vaccine was a red thing when it was Trump that suggested it. right?
Yeah.
Like, and now we're so far down the other end that like the main. I mean, I think he did get confirmed, right? Did RFK?
I'm pretty sure he's going to.
Yeah, but like the main thing, the main issue everyone had with him was that he's a anti-vaxxer,
Yeah.
right? Which, look, I mean, I definitely don't agree with him and everything, but I think he's a reasonable guy, right? Like he's deciding stuff because he's reasoning on it. Is he right in his reasoning? Eh, Here and there, he gets things wrong, clearly. For example, I think his opinions on vaccines are a bit too, like, where some people are like, vaccines are like a religious thing where it's like, it must work. Of course it works. If you say it doesn't work, you're anti-science, you're questioning the truth or some shit like that.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side, he kind of goes a bit far in the other direction and like saying, "Oh, well, there was no autism before, and now there's vaccines." It's kind of like, okay, we've sort of decided what cause and effect is there.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I think the thing with him, I think this is the thing with a lot of the people that Trump put in place is like, do I want RFK Jr. to be the head of Health and Human Services for the next 30 years? No, I think that will probably end up in a lot of like bad things
30
happening.
years.
No.
All right.
I'm just trying to illustrate a point. But like, do I
Okay.
think it'd be good being there for 4 years?
Yeah.
Yes. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like he's starting to make some changes. Like, do I want him to make so many changes? No, but like he's not.
Yeah.
There's only so much he can accomplish in 4 years, and I do think that's the fundamental problem with political parties being in power for too long. Is that like one of my fundamental views on this is that like a party gets elected in order to solve like the big problems that people care about, but
Hmm.
within 4 to 8 years they kind of solve those problems, and then they
Hmm.
start solving problems that don't need to be solved. Like this is the
Yeah.
problem with the Democrats, right? Like they got elected in 2008 to solve a whole host of economic problems. They
Hmm.
solved those problems, and then they were like, okay, now we're gonna like cut off 14-year-old boys'
Oh,
dicks, and
why? Yeah.
it's just like that's weird. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing about waiting for too long. This is kind of sort of linked back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of like why the Dems of why blue has kind of become bad. It's because they've just been won for so long. And
yeah,
I don't know how familiar you are with UK politics, but that's kind of what happened here, just the other way around. Like the Tories were in charge for so long that Rishi Sunak, I think he was actually a pretty good prime minister. Like people everything they say about him that's bad is his party and it's the people who he preceded who
yeah,
it was a bit of a clown car. It was like the last person climbing out of a clown car is like just a normal bloke who's just getting the job done and you're sick of clowns. So you're like, you must be a clown. And then yeah, he got voted out in did you know that an interesting thing actually about the general election where he lost? Um, it wasn't actually that Labour got loads of extra votes.
oh yeah,
They
I
were
saw that.
they were pretty much in line with the 2019 election. It was just that Tory voters just went off a cliff, and a little bit went to Lib Dem. I had a couple friends who told me they protest voted for Lib Dem. Great,
Yeah,
and I said to them like, if you do this, you're guaranteeing Labour wins and you do not want that. Like I was like a blabbering idiot. I was like that whole week. I was like, guys, do not let this happen because you will have a communist country once Labour
yeah.
get into
I,
power.
I, the thing is about England, and this is, I hope you don't get arrested after I post this, but like, is that you guys kind of already have a communist country. Like in my perspective, England is kind of already gone. Like, you already have people being arrested for speech. You
Hmm.
already have like, I mean, we can get into the whole grooming gang thing, but
Oh,
you already have like, you already have two-tier justice system
mm,
where preferred racial groups get to live off of welfare and just rape people, right? Like
yeah.
you have like it what and what I heard is that that's the problem people have with the Tories was that they spoke right but then governed left. Like the Tories were more left than the Democrats are in America.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think that what it also was though is it was like they wanted to kind of get with the times, have these token gestures that showed they were, not like a conservative party, we're like forward-thinking party that's like on board with the woke agenda and like keeping up with what's the current thing. And so, in times the way that like appeared was, yeah, just doing stuff that was kind of appeasement to different voting bases. I mean, look, on the whole, like, is Britain already communist? I think the biggest issue, and this kind of ties back to the thing that we actually spoke about this in terms of like why it scares me seeing the kind of American jobs should be for Americans, which is a simplification, and you didn't say that, but like
Yeah.
that vague kind of thinking is because in the UK, I think the reason we suck is because for a long time we were kind of riding the high of, oh, we were the British Empire, the sun never set on the British Empire, and so on. And the real thing of it was we thought, oh, aren't the Americans so cute? They just came from us, aren't they? So, growing up at school, I went to quite a like posh school. Like people would say stuff like, oh, Americans, they're funny, but they're a bit annoying because they're so loud. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we are laughable compared to them. And this kind of delusion of, aren't we so great, but also isn't everything so shit? That's the other thing that really makes us not be able to perform. Because if you go speak to a random person on the street in London, right, and say, what are you excited about in the future? Nothing. Everything's awful. Like the government sucks. Trump is a dictator, or something about Elon Musk or something. And because there's no optimism about the future, there's no belief. Like, people don't want to do anything. Like that. Like there aren't loads of entrepreneurs. There isn't loads of effective research. Everyone's just a cynic, and because of that, we kind of spiral. That's how we spiral into communism. Just more and more failure.
Have you looked at what's it called? Like the GDP per capita numbers of like the UK and France and Germany and Spain? They're literally lower than they were in 2008. I posted this graph of my X like 1,000 times. I can pull it up now, but it's literally Germany is like $2,000 per capita richer than they were in 2008. Every other country is poorer, while the United States has doubled. And it's like, if England was an American state, you'd be poorer than Mississippi.
Man, I saw that going around a bit, and boy, I'm always that one person who has to, whenever someone talks about, whenever it's like Americans on X talking about like how much things suck in the UK, I'm like, adopt us, like the UK a state, like we want to join.
So this actually, the funny thing is, like, I'm surprised why Trump wants to, get Canada. Besides apparently all the Indians that Elon Musk was working for SpaceX, but like, it's just like Canada would be the most liberal state in America. Like, why do you want these guys? Like, this would be terrible. This would be Democratic dominance for another 30 years. Like, we can't have this. Like, get Greenland.
So do you know Pirate Wires?
Yeah.
So I think it was on Pirate Wires where I saw them saying, well, maybe another way we could go about this is it could just become like Canada gets folded into the states that they border on, and so it's the House of Representatives, right, where it's like disproportionate. Yeah, so you'd be able to like remove the power of like Canada's landmass from like,
it would still like we would, because we're adding 40 million people. You know what I mean? So like what would happen is that like New York, for instance, would get like 15 more electoral votes, and they would all go blue. You know what I mean? And and North Dakota would start going blue. You know what I mean? So I don't want Canada. I mean, like, it's so one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this specifically is so back in 2012, 2013, like a big thing in American politics on the left, and the reason why I believe in this so much is I literally believe the opposite of this was liberals on the left would constantly say back in 2013, back when Europe and America were still kind of similar, like we're a little bit ahead, but like it was kind of the same place. They were just like, look at how Europe was able to have all these social programs, they're able to have immigration, they're able to have all these things. Like, we should have that in America, right? We should adopt these liberal policies. And so for me, like, having believed that, and now seeing 10 years later what the result of those liberal policies are, I'm just like, no, I was wrong about that. I'm really happy we didn't listen to me because I was incorrect.
I think that it's like a kind of push and pull, right? Like in California, I guess is where you have the most of that in the States. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, actually, maybe this is a bad example because I understand it's a huge failure, but the proposition system, where you can have kind of this kind of proxy to direct democracy.
Yeah, it's
Um,
terrible because literally
yeah, so
people
I
just
hear
keep on voting for more services and less taxes. Like it's
people vote for
every
you keep voting
yeah.
yourself more stuff until the people, the dependents who I'm kind of quoting fucking David Freeberg here, but it's like you know the dependents keep voting themselves more and more stuff until they grow to the point where the dependents outweigh the dependees, and then it's runaway, and then you never come back from it. And I think that's what's going to happen in the UK. To be honest, I hope it doesn't. But
I mean,
I am.
I hope you move to America, man. Like
Yeah, me
I'm rooting for
too.
you to be able to get a visa, become an American. It's just better, to be honest. I hate to be a chauvinist like that, but like
No,
you
no, it
know,
is.
American culture is just because like I remember people talking about this like the feeling in America right now, and I mean, it's very tangential for me because I'm in Brazil, but I can still kind of feel it with
Hmm.
people I talk to. Is like you have this culture shift of like, yeah, we're winning, we're number one,
It's more.
and then, like I I I have this feeling about degrowthers, where like I feel like degrowth is just socialist cope, where like
Yeah.
socialists realize that they're not able to actually have success in
Hmm.
capitalism. They're not actually be able to deliver the success of capitalism. So they're just you know what's that called? Gaslighting you into believing
Yeah.
that success is bad. And it's just like, no, it's not. Like having
Yeah.
dope shit is dope. Like, what are we
Yeah.
talking about here?
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about this quite a bit because I have a family member who like is basically like a product manager in a well-known bank. And man, he like I didn't know he was a degrowther. Like he loves to like kind of go on long cycling journeys for like days through like those kinds of areas in the UK where you can do so.
Yeah,
Um, and then when this came up, he's never ever spoken to me in any kind of hostile way. But when this degrowth stuff came up, he was like a viper. Like he was at me, and I was trying to understand it because I thought, where is this coming from? This is a smart guy, he works in tech, kind of, I mean, finance, right? And
yeah,
the best I can understand it is it's like, there's not to say he is like selfish. I don't think he is, but I kind of feel like this, it's like from spending time in nature, being like, this is great. It's like that selfish need to, oh, I don't like the mechanisms of civilization disrupting this thing I'm enjoying. We
yeah.
shouldn't be here, but that's for your benefit. What about the, millions of people in South America, or, there's still a lot of poor people in China, just everywhere all over Asia, Africa. What about all of the other people, the other life forms that exist that really take priority over your guilt for messing up a
I,
field or something?
I also like to push back on those people and just point out that like when you're cycling through the countryside, you're not actually in nature. Like
Yeah.
that isn't nature.
No.
Like first of all, nature is you without a bike. Nature is
Exactly.
you naked, and nature is you running away from a lion. Like
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
nature. You know what I mean? So like you are in a playground of civilization. You're in a
Right.
park. You're not
Yeah.
in nature.
E- Even
The only
the
place,
trails, right? The,
yeah.
the paths. It's all crafted by man.
There are only two places on planet Earth that I can reasonably call nature, which are like the Amazon jungle because it's still like uncivilized, and like Tajikistan. Like those are the two places that are like nature. Everything else is not nature. So like stop, you know.
Is that from personal experience?
No, I do want to visit Tajikistan though, but like no, Tajikistan is like like Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Kurdistan. It's
Hmm.
like very like clannish.
Hmm.
I don't know. Let's say backward. Like one thing for me is like um, traveling has kind of made me a lot more right wing in that like I think that like liberals and this kind of goes to like the point about Balaji is that like
Hmm.
because I think he has the same mindset, but from a conservative fashion or like from a techno fashion, is that like I think liberals have this sort of like cosmopolitan delusion of believing that like all people are kind of the same, yada yada yada, all cultures are the same, all
Hmm.
cultures have equal worth. all those types of things. And that's because like if you go to the richest place in London and the richest place
Yeah.
in New York and the richest place in Singapore and the richest place in Tokyo, yes, they're all the same. But if you literally walk 15 minutes away from those places, it becomes very different very quickly, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that like I kind of have this general rule when I travel is that like I is just like I really respect the place that I go to while I'm there. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
respect the rules, respect the customs. When I was in India, I didn't shit talk India at all when I was in
Mhm.
India. Like literally the second that I passed security, I was not technically in India anymore, like security at the airport. So that's why I started shit talking India. But like while I was in India, I
Before the
was not
plane
shit
took
talking
off.
it because I strongly believe against it. But all that to say is that like I think that is kind of like you know the problem with this, let's just, borders don't matter, all this other type of stuff, which is that like,
Mm.
one, I think that like there are a lot of cultures that are kind of incongruent with one another, and two, like I do think fundamentally, like I think the United States is very different than other countries in this respect because it was
Yeah.
built on like a multicultural idea. But fundamentally, like I do think that like the point of a government is to look out for like the people
The
in the
people
country
they're
at that
governing.
moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I think going back to the specific thing that kind of initiated this conversation, that H-1B issue, I think it's an interesting issue because I think that like it started out with everybody on like two radically different sides, but
Mhm.
then like I think most people kind of like got pretty aggressively to the middle. I think
Mhm.
there's some people who are still on like
Yeah.
the ends. Like Steve Bannon is saying, I don't want any immigrants whatsoever, and like it's just like
Yeah.
I don't believe that obviously, but like you know there are a lot of abuses, and I think that you do need to give priority to people in your own country first. You know what I mean?
Mhm. I mean, I think I
Except for you,
agree.
I think you should come.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think I'm with you that you need to like that's your job. If you're Donald Trump's job right now is look after number one, and number one is the USA, right?
Yeah,
But I think where we disagree slightly is that I think what's good for I don't know, some knowledge workers in New York now isn't necessarily what's good. I mean, maybe that's a bad comparison, but like, if it's better for the US to, I don't know, let's say, kind of pulling numbers out my ass here, but have 10,000, software engineers coming from Asia who are all just being applied to the AI arms race, which I'm kind of the opinion it is an arms race, then
yeah,
I mean, I guess that kind of does ground why I think it's maybe a net win because the arms race is won by the US. The US has the abundance, and then what work looks like. I think is going to change a lot going forward. And I'm not necessarily. I'm trying to not dress it up in all of the kind of um, all of the very
Sam Altman bullshit.
yeah, I was trying to say it in a nice way. I love Sam. I think he's an incredible like entrepreneur. But yeah, I'm trying to not put all of that like gold shimmer on everything. But I
Yeah,
do think things are going to fundamentally change. And I think it's like when you look back at like I don't know the internet, right? Like all of the jobs being worked now. How many of those would have existed before the internet? Obviously, quite a lot, but there's a significant amount of jobs that just would not have existed prior to this
yeah,
technology. And I don't know. I think I actually had a disagreement. Who I've been DMing them when with someone on X about like generative AI and this whole thing about it's not art and it's stealing and it's soul crushing. Well, I mean, I kind of went into it trying to like understand what this person's like why they were feeling like this, and they had a reasonable like experience. They've been kind of made redundant, and they were struggling to get their like find any new work, and they had to downsize where they were living. And I get all of that, but I just think it's like okay, that's an individual, and there's many individuals who are experiencing stuff like that. But net, how many people is this going to lift out of poverty in the US? Right?
yeah. I do agree with you about that in broad strokes. I mean, I mean, two sort of general points. The first one is that like, I do agree with you that there is like I don't know if tension is the right word, but there is like a balance
Hmm.
between looking out for the people who are in your country today and looking
Yeah.
out for the people who are in your country in 100 years. And
Hmm.
that's actually like what I think is good about America versus Europe is that I think Europe looks out too much for the people who are in the country this second and not enough for the people who are in the country in 100 years, right?
Yeah.
Because for instance, like having 20-hour work weeks and like that type of bullshit, right? It's not helping. Like I actually had an argument with a German in an airport in Frankfurt one time about this, where he was talking about like how like selfish Americans are. Like as an American in Europe, you hear all this fucking bullshit. You never
I'm
hear this
sure.
shit, by the way, in Asia, in South America. Nobody
Yeah.
in
They're happy to
like
see you.
happy to see you. It's also funny that like it's always the Europeans that are upset at Americans on behalf of the third world that Europe colonized that America did not colonize. Right? It is like, it's like if there's like a wife beater, and like his wife shows up to like a party with like a black eye, and like you make a joke about the black eye, and the wife beater's like, "How dare you?" It's like, you're the one who caused it. What the fuck are you angry at me for? And anyway, so he's calling like me selfish, me personally. No, I mean Americans for like, you work all the time, all this type of stuff. And I'm like, well, fundamentally, it is selfish for you to not work and have your grandchildren be poor because you
Mhm.
want to take an extra vacation, right? So I do completely agree that like, what I think it makes America good is that we do kind of sacrifice our own health and our own happiness in order to have a more prosperous country. I do think that there's a limit to that though, where like you do kind of need to pull back and say, hey, you know, we can win the basketball game by 30 points. We don't need to win it by 70 points. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
and like I do think that as much as people fearmonger about China, and I certainly fearmonger about China, like that's
Hmm.
always my answer when people make anti-AI claims. I'm just like, do you
Hmm.
really want the government from 1982, which is China, 1984, which is China, like the book
Hmm.
1984?
Hmm.
Do you really want them to have AI? Obviously not. However, like I do think that at a certain point, like you know, um, people are being brought in order to undercut workers who want to work
Yeah.
60-hour weeks and not 120-hour weeks for
Yeah.
$40,000 a year.
Do,
That's fucking
do you know
ridiculous.
do you know which one it was I saw? I think it was you that sent me this when I was like, okay, I think I might have been wrong about this. There is some abuse happening. It was when I saw 7-Eleven. Then I was like,
Yeah,
oh, okay. Ooh. And then I also
yeah,
heard, I think it was A16Z, I think, did like a talk about this, obviously, because of Shiram. He wasn't involved with it, but I assume they were like, getting involved in the space for that reason. And they mentioned that there's the O1 visa, which, okay, obviously a lot harder to get, but
yeah,
well, why not have something in the middle? And then you can completely cut back on H1B and make sure it's not abused, and then you make it very specific, and then you can have
yeah,
something in the middle, which is like, I mean, what I really want is for Trump to have like a kind of entrepreneur's visa or something for, so because O1, I think it's like you need to prove that you're like best in the world at a
yeah.
thing.
O1's impossible. I mean, it's not
Yeah,
impossible. It's very hard to get. Like it is. Yeah, no, I
yeah.
completely agree. I mean, like I think I think we're on the same page upon this. I mean, Elon at first when he proposes, I was against it, but then like I thought about it, I'm like, you're really just against this because you're mad at Elon right now. This is actually a good idea. Where he said that like you need to double the minimum salary, which I think will bring it to like $160,000, and then
Hmm.
have the companies pay a fee. And I'm like,
Yeah,
okay, at that point, like that is fair. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
if you're paying 160K or 200K for it, like okay. But I mean about the future of work, I actually completely agree with you. So like one thing that kind of happened to me was that so I've been doing uh like freelance copywriting for companies for the past 2 years.
Hmm.
And ChatGPT actually helped me make a lot more money because
Hmm.
people would use ChatGPT, would get them shitty results, and they would come to me, and I'd be like, okay, here, let me do this for you. And I got to be able to charge way more because of ChatGPT. But
Hmm.
then like 4 or 5 months ago, I started to see like, okay, there's a little bit of a writing on the wall starting to happen. Where like the sea is starting to change a little bit, and I was like, okay, now it's time to pivot. You know what I mean? And I agree with you that like if you are an artist and your job is being replaced by ChatGPT, you need to figure out a way to utilize ChatGPT to increase your own productivity in a
Mhm.
way. You know, because like if you're a good artist, for example, like for me, like the thing that I helped people with was like outbound sequences of like, you
Mhm.
know, direct response marketing, right? For like, you know, software companies. And like for me, like the benefit that I have is not, you know, like being able to write good copy. Like anyone can theoretically write good copy. For me, it's discerning good versus bad copy, right?
Yeah.
Knowing what's effective or not. And if you're an artist, like being able to discern what's good or bad is really the thing. Like, you know, the classic Rick Rubin, you know, meme that people have. So I would just say to that artist person who was mad about it, it's just like figure out a way to
Yeah.
change in this world. Don't just be pissed at ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It didn't
Yeah. I
take your
mean,
job. You lost it, you lazy fuck. Sorry.
I mean, in nicer terms, I basically, so this person did kind of take a few jabs at me. People are very quick to take kind of shots at me for having EAC in my name. You know, they
Yeah.
say like tech bro, fascist, like you don't care about people, all of this kind of stuff. And then, so
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm not going to insult this person. I'm just going to like make my point that I actually do want to understand what this person's view is. And then I got into the DMs of them, and then they sent me an essay that they wrote about their experience, which was long. Like there
Yeah.
was a lot going on there, so you know, I get it a bit more. But yeah, I mean, like I kind of why I said to DM me because I was like, look, you know, let's just talk about what happened here, why you lost your job, you know, what's going on. Can we look at maybe helping you, you know, like you said, you saw the writing was on the wall, and so you were like, time to think about this differently. And this is what I'm
Yeah.
saying, that like, you know, okay, you're in Brazil, but like you're still like, you know, Western like me, but like someone in, I don't know, someone else in Brazil who's not like, you know, from the West, they're gonna like, you know, if they see the writings on the wall, they have to switch. They don't have the luxury of complaining on the internet and saying, oh, you know, fascist, capitalist, like survival. That's what the rest
Yeah.
of the world knows, and that's kind of what my thing is with like, you know, kind of the AI is taking our jobs, and then obviously the kind of extreme sort of, oh, you know, you're an EAC fascist or whatever people have been saying to me here or there, is like you need to get with the program. Like that's been the case for the entirety of history, that like things change, business is disrupted, and you need to get with the program. Like not being able to see something coming doesn't mean you get a do-over, doesn't mean you get
Yeah.
to like say the rest of the world must stop spinning, right? Like I don't know, it's like this is also kind of how I think about like the whole copywriting, or not copywriting, that's a separate thing, but like AI models training on like scraped content. Like where do you stand on the idea that OpenAI stole like journalists' articles and
For
content?
me, it just seems like a technicality. It seems like something that people do in order to like attack OpenAI. I don't think it's legitimate
Mm-hmm.
criticism. I don't really give a shit. I think it's fucking stupid. I think you're literally. I think it's people who know, like, because like copyright law is like a good legal vector to attack OpenAI. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's like a legitimate like concern. Like
Yeah.
like sure, there's some examples where it's like, oh, there's like a Getty, like OpenAI does something and it says Getty Images, and you're
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
see, and it's just like, okay, like so what? Like shut the fuck up. Like you
Yeah.
know,
I mean,
at least that's my feeling about it. Like
yeah. I mean,
I just don't like disingenuous arguments. You know, I
that
really
that
hate disingenuous arguments.
that's what I mean. It's like from my perspective, it's like okay, so OpenAI bought access to a bunch of books, for example, and the seller of those books was happy to give them access to it, but they didn't include in their terms of service, you can't train a machine learning model on the contents of this book. And from my perspective, that's your fault. If you didn't put that in your contract, oh, well, you're a publisher, you're not a machine learning company, so you're a business. Like that is how
Yeah,
business is. That's how I think about it. Like you could have been paying attention to what could disrupt your business in the future and had the foresight to put it into your terms of service, then you would have had a legal case against OpenAI. But if you lost because you didn't see the writing on the wall, and then you want to come back and say, guys, like this is unfair. You're stealing, like you're stealing from artists. This is inhumane. This is unholy. It's like it's basically just crying for a do-over. And so I don't know. I don't really have much sympathy for that.
There's one conservative commentator who, like, I at first I found him abrasive and I didn't like him, but now I actually watch him kind of religiously while I play like chess online. I usually like to spend like an hour like decompressing, and like I put him on sometimes. But like, he was making this point. It was about a completely different argument, but I think it rings true. Where he was talking, I forgot what the argument was, but I think it might have been like, boys being like red pilled about like women and stuff, about like, you know, like the sexual politics and stuff. He's obviously a conservative, so his main point is like, look, I'm sympathetic with your arguments about the culture. Obviously, like, you know, I'm a conservative, but what are young men supposed to do today? Like you wake up, what are you supposed to do today? And his argument was like, you can't just sit around and complain like women suck or something. He's like, you need to go out and like do something about this thing, right? And that's how I feel about like the artists who are complaining about this. It's like, okay, like it sucks that OpenAI like stole your shit and like your life has changed, but like what are you doing today? You need to wake up, you need to pay your bills. How are you going to do that? And just sitting around and complaining about it is not going to solve that problem. And again, like if you are an old early adopter, you can make way more money because of it. Like if you're one of the first people on the train, you can figure out a way to make even more money. And people constantly think that like, oh, okay, well the train's already left the station. It's like, no, the train is just starting to move. So just get on there right now and start making the money. I actually, you know, I kind of made this point sarcastically, but just to like suck Sam Altman off a little bit with this like flowery language. You know, I do think that like we're gonna live in a world where everybody is like the entrepreneur of their own mini business, and I think that's a really good thing actually. That AI is gonna like allow for that. There's gonna be a lot of disruption between now and then, but you know, I do think that the future is bright. You know, and that's why I hate fucking degrowthers, man. Like, I'm so this might be like airing some like personal laundry, but like. Right now, I'm the only person in my family of like my generation, my family who wants to have kids, and everybody else is just like they're all my age or older, but they've all been hit with like that degrowth mindset of like, you know, and by the way, like I think a lot of people who say like they don't want to have kids because of the climate. I know you're way younger than me, so this is like conversation you're gonna have in like 10 years, but like, you know, people are like I don't want to have kids because of the climate. Like I'm always just like that's not true. You just don't want to have kids. And you're using the climate as an excuse, but you just want to drink and do drugs. I'm like, by the way, I've drank a lot. I've done a lot of drugs. It's great. Highly recommend it. But at some point in your life, you have to like grow up and like, you know, have some responsibility. And I just think that degrowthing, you know, it's just a sad way of looking at the world, in my opinion. Like everything else aside, being right, being wrong, whatever. It's just sad. Like you think that like the best days are behind us?
Yeah, I mean,
Terrible.
I think it also kind of comes from this kind of like mimetic theory, right? That like right now, because the world is so increasingly complex, to navigate that in a way that's easy and also makes you sound smart is to poke a hole in something and say everything sucks because of this. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So you could point to Gaza and say, well, America can't be the greatest country in the world because they're bombing kids, which is not factually accurate. But, you know, it's something that seems smart to, you know, an average person in a passing conversation, and therefore it picks up. And then that's why I think you have this kind of pervasiveness of this idea that there's nothing to be excited about. Like everything sucks. We're all powerless. We can't do anything. And that's the brain rot that's infected the UK.
I actually speaking about how terrible degrowthers are. There's this one named Jason Hickman, I think is his name. He's like a pretty prominent one, and I know this because like I researched it after somebody made the point to me that the British were responsible for 100 million deaths in India during colonization, and it's weird because I've read a few books about British colonization of India. I have a weird relationship with India where I think that the country is shit. I don't want to go back, but so many of my friends are Indian. I'm fascinated by India. I love the
Hmm.
food. It's a real tension. But like I read a bunch of books. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. For example, the population of Bangladesh from 1900 to 1932 doubled under British rule. So like,
Hmm.
how are they responsible for 100 million deaths? And then I read Jason Hickman because he's the one who like published that. He's like a prominent growther, and he was like I read his study, and I was just like, you are actually mentally retarded. Like so basically what he did was he compared Indian life expectancy during the course of the British Raj to English life expectancy, right? So
Right.
it's basically like English, like Indian life expectancy was like 45 and English life expectancy was like 57. So they're responsible for all these millions of deaths. And like you didn't take into consideration the fact that what was India's life expectancy before the British Raj? You didn't include that at all.
Mate,
All this to say that like the people who make these arguments are so fucking stupid. They don't think about these basic concepts
I
in
don't know.
other
Like,
facets.
do you ever wonder? I do wonder sometimes though if it's like they're intentionally screwing with numbers to like push across socialist agendas, because I think the other thing is it's so like I can't remember who said this. Something along the lines of like it's easy to be a popular socialist, right? Like it's literally the easiest thing to do as a
Yeah,
political move, because it's you literally saying, oh, I'm for the people, and we're the Save the Puppies party, so you should vote for us. It's like it's the simplest thing that can appeal to like everyone who doesn't really think about it much. So
yeah.
I don't know. That does make me wonder if could he really be that stupid? Maybe, but
I
I mean,
think
just
so. Yeah.
but just to your point about the like, okay, so this is something that my family have kind of said to me about, like, kind of the the during the British rule XYZ happened. Not like my parents, but like some of my dad's family are a bit more political.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I remember. I think. Do you know what it was? It was when I was asking my aunt about the Portuguese in India, because my girlfriend was like Indian Portuguese. So like
Oh yeah, yeah,
her
yeah.
dad was like half Indian, half Portuguese. And so I was asking her about that, and she was like, "Oh, they weren't as cruel." Or no, she was like, "Oh, they were." Really cruel. Look at this. And she sent me this link to like some torture device. And it was such a random tin pot website from some far corner of the internet. And I'm just like, man, like people can really find any evidence for anything on the internet if you really try hard enough, because
Yeah.
everything, it's just whatever anyone wants to put up there. So have you seen in my bio on X, I have like these kind of three phrases, and one of them is history is starting, right? So the reason behind that is I'm like looking back at all of these kind of past transgressions. I don't care. Like if the bad stuff happened, that sucks. That's not relevant right now, unless someone who is around was involved in that, and
Yeah.
and they're like related to a decision we need to make going forward. Then that's relevant. But like
Yeah.
everyone involved is long dead. Like
Yeah.
move on, focus on the things you can deal with, because so history is starting. My idea behind that is like everything it's so easy to fake stuff now, right? And it's so easy to muddy the waters using AI that in like 50 100 years I think everything will be on chain, because
Yeah.
you need it. Like it's too easy to fake stuff, and so the history that has started is the existing chains. Like the
But
earliest history is the Bitcoin blockchain.
one random question: is your girlfriend's family from Goa?
This ex-girlfriend, but yeah, her dad's family is from Goa. Yeah.
Nice. I wanted to visit. I only visited Mumbai. I was told by a lot of people that I need to visit New Delhi.
Hmm.
I might actually go to India for 2 days just to have
Hmm.
the Indian food again, because I actually do miss that a lot. It's way
I don't
better
know.
in India. Um,
Is it worth it? Because like you need to acclimatize to being in India, so it's like you get in and then the
so
heat.
we're spending a year going around the world. So
Mhm.
like we're kind of looking for a place that we want to settle down in. like for like the short long term. We're thinking about Indonesia actually, which by the way, Indonesians hate Indians. I don't know if you know this. They hate Indians. I remember one time I was in a Uber and I so two stories about this. So one, I was in an Uber and I was like, I asked him a question about like, because I'm always interested like what people's feelings are about colonization in other countries. I always ask, and it's just like, I love white people. It's just, if you were an Indian, I would have kicked you out. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And there was this girl that I was seeing, and I told her I was visiting Mumbai, and she was like, okay, don't ever call me again. I was like, why? I'm just visiting. She's like, don't call me. But anyway, so I was thinking about going for a couple of days just because I miss the Indian food. We're actually going to be in Europe in like 2 or 3 months. If you want to come,
2 or 3 months.
We're going to be in Portugal and Spain.
What month is this? February. Oh yeah, that might actually be quite well timed after my exams. Hit me up. Let me know when your kind of timings are looking like, and yeah, we can see if we can sort something out. Because I'm still at university.
Yeah.
So my exams I think should end like by end of May, and then I mean I'm desperate to drop out because I just want to work on my startup full time. But
when I was in college, I literally had the credits to graduate early. And my mom was like, "No, you have to finish. You have to finish." I'm like, "But like, I can finish. I can just finish early." And she's like, "No, because I took a lot of APs in high school, and so I got like a lot of credits." And she's like, "No, you have to do the extra semester." And I was just like, "I want to go out and work. I want to go out and do shit." Like,
that's crazy. I didn't know you could do that, but like, good on you for like getting it. I mean, I guess it's a shame that you didn't. Your mom wouldn't let you end early, but.
I got to take bullshit classes, I guess, and then like have to pay. I still have to pay the tuition. It's not like if you literally you have to. But yeah, no, I mean, I think generally, our general ideas are the same on this. I think I just have a lot more sympathy towards, kind of the nationalists who are like, look, we need to focus, on our own country, a little bit more. I do agree that it can go into a dark place very quickly, and you kind of need to like walk that line of like not going into that dark place. I do think it's interesting though, like, for example, Hispanics voted 46% for Donald Trump, right? And it's like, people say Donald Trump is a racist. It's like, well, why did Hispanics vote for him so much? Well, it's because he's like, look, we need to take care of the people here, including the Hispanics. You know what I mean? It's not a racist thing. It's just, once we don't have enough people, then we can bring people in. But we're kind of in a place, in America and some other parts of the world where it's like, we don't have enough jobs. So we need to.
It was an overcorrection, right? Like from the kind of globalization push to bring people in to fill jobs, then it went too far, and there was a bit of grift, there was a bit of trying to bend the rules on the H-1Bs, and then India's just a big country, right? Like, so you're gonna get more people coming from there than anywhere else. And then obviously China's similar size but different kind of they're very nationalist in their own kind of inwards facing way. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess also the thing is like I kind of see the US like I feel like I act more like an American than a British person. Like,
you're an American person with a British accent. Like you're not a British person.
Yeah, like I feel, I don't know. I feel like here everyone's so like everything sucks and don't try anything and don't aim to do anything unless you've got like the kudos or the bona fides, or like everyone needs to stay in their lane. It's like no one should ever try and like take a swing in the UK.
Yeah, I remember Christine Lagarde one time said she was asked a question of like, why are Americans such more risk takers than Europeans? And she's like, well, Europe used to have two types of people: risk takers and people who are risk averse. And then all the risk takers went to America. And I also think you have an extra problem where like I think that immigration in Europe and America, the issue is conflated a lot. When I actually think that it's so dramatically different, both in terms of the countries that are being immigrated to. right?
Mhm.
Like white Americans can't really claim to be like the indigenous people of America for obvious reasons, right? But like
Mhm.
white Anglos are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like my family's Polish, right? And
Mhm.
like um, being Polish is not just a belief in ideas. It is where was your family during this
Yeah.
battle in
Yeah.
1512? You know what I mean? And so like European countries do have a much stronger claim to ethno nationalism that
Mhm.
than the United States does for obvious reasons. But I think on the converse as well, America also just gets way better immigrants. Like the people who
Yes.
come to America to work. The people who
Mhm.
come to Europe come to live off
To
of social
mooch.
services.
Yeah.
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 And
To
so you have this
mooch.
vicious cycle where all of the good people are leaving and all the shitty people, all the people who are coming in are reinforcing this
Mhm.
shitty way of thinking. One of my thoughts on like immigration is that I think that we should do trades between countries where I think
Mhm.
that like the United States and the UK, it should be like, you know, which Americans want to become UK citizens, which UK citizens want to become Americans, and like
Yeah.
we can send you 5,000 and you send us 5,000, and you just swap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that'll make life a whole lot easier, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's like so I'm kind of conflicted on the like whether stuff like this is going to happen because that sounds great, and then I'm like, and now Trump is like he's just doing shit. He's
Yeah,
just like he's living the you can just do stuff. He's like,
yeah,
yeah, Gulf of Mexico, nope, Gulf of America,
I love that.
Canada, nope, 50 first state,
Yeah,
right? Like he's just pointing and shooting, and I'm like, so maybe, just maybe, we could get some kind of dynamism with the UK where maybe there's a fast track entrepreneurship, immigration or any kind of immigration kind of fast tracked or any kind of long standing relationship. But alas, fucking our government are just so hostile to him. Like they
yeah,
were giving statements about how it's like the Third Reich when when he
yeah. I mean,
he got inaugurated.
America right now is basically a bald eagle playing the electric guitar. Like it's just fucking rocking and rolling and just like
Yeah.
fuck yeah, freedom. And like England is, just upset right now. For Americans, it's actually like really sad to see what happened to England because like Americans do like England a lot.
Hmm.
Like you basically our parents, but
Yeah.
parents die one day.
Yeah, it's bleak, but I don't know. It's like Americans kind of look at this with this kind of like fondness of like how quaint it is here. But then I don't know, man. I just think that it's just this pessimism. It's so like viral and corrosive, and like there's just nothing left anymore. Like the scientists are all like head down in the science and not thinking about, okay, well, how do we? I mean, I think DeepMind kind of says it all, right? Our biggest contribution, I would say, to the world of this millennium is DeepMind, right? Really the most meaningful AI company. They started the deep learning revolution, right? OpenAI was formed in reaction to DeepMind. Um, and what happens to them? They just immediately jump ship and join Google,
Yeah,
right? Like, and I'm a big fan of Demis, and I'm sure that he's going to continue to really have this meteoric career that he's having. But it's just like I think that really says it all. That like even he was like, yeah, fuck this, I'm off to Palo Alto.
yeah. France. So it's funny because like you think of a country like Thailand, for instance, right? In
Mm,
Thailand, you think of Thailand as a tourist country. Like the
mhm.
entire economy is built on tourism, right?
Yeah,
You think of that, right? Thailand, the percent of Thailand GDP that tourism accounts for is less than that of France, Spain, Germany, Italy.
wow.
Like Europe is turning into a museum. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it is the thing that like the second somebody is able to, they fuck off to America
Yeah,
because things are a lot more brighter
yeah,
over there.
land of opportunity.
Yeah. But so my girlfriend started to glare at me because I
Yeah,
promised her that we'd just be talking for an hour.
yeah.
But
I
it was
need to
good.
shoot anyway. I'm dying to go to the toilet, but this
Yeah,
was fun.
the doors. Yeah. Do
Um,
you want to do like not a weekly, but do you want to do like a regular series where we talk about tech and issues?
we could have like a doc of
Yeah,
stuff that's going on, and then I don't know, maybe we're seeing the like different perspectives at stuff, so I can kind of fill you in on stuff, you can fill me in and on
yeah,
stuff that you're seeing. Yeah, could be fun.
yeah. I'll see you when I'm in Europe. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
dude.
awesome. Okay,
Talk to you
well,
later.
take care.
Take care.